Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can thrive and grow. And today's guest is Dorice Horenstein. Hi, Dorice.
Hello. Good to be here.
It's so good to have you as a guest. I'm so excited about this episode. You know, Dorice and I met and we instantly connected. And I asked her to be a guest on this podcast because I wanted her to share her story. She has a very, very unique story of, well, you know, Dorice, you served as an officer in the Israeli army. Then you came here to America and you basically had years of experience in the education field, right? I mean, how many years was that?
Correct. 30 years 30. I was in education. And then the last 16 years of my career, I was an education director of a synagogue. So I did programming for kindergarten all the way to 90 years old. You know, holidays, theology, practice, celebration, anything that has to do with Judaism.
Yeah, so 16 out of the 30, that's what you did. And the listeners, I mean, the viewers, those that are viewing this interview go, okay, she started when she was 5. We know that. All right, good. So then, you know, you and I talked, and then you told me that story that after having that career for 30 years, you decided to make a change and become an entrepreneur and actually make the world your classroom and help people overcome challenges, as you like to say, from oi to joy, and get them to overcome different obstacles so they can actually live the life that they want. And you wrote this bestseller book, which is also behind you, but Moments of the Heart, highly recommended. And you basically created it, and you wrote this book in 2020. And within basically a couple of years, you became so well known with such a big network and really got your business like from the ground up, but really successful.
Thank you.
I go, okay, Dorice, I want you to be on this podcast and tell your story, your decision of like, okay, I'm going to start. What happened? Like, how did you make the decision? And how did you basically created your brand? Okay, you have an amazing brand that you created, and with a lot of business development and wonderful business development, you really are super successful. So that's what we're going to talk about in terms of that system, right? You know, this podcast is all about systems. We're going to talk about your system and hopefully inspire our listeners that, yes, even if you had a career working somewhere else, it was fulfilling, because education is very fulfilling. I come from that background as well. And I know the stories you told me about the kids that you actually influenced their lives and the families, etc.
Yes.
But now you took it to a next level and
correct.
Inspire others to do the same. So let's start with your story. So tell us your story of how it all came about.
Okay. So I came to America in 1986 with December 1986 with one suitcase, $600, and no coat in the month of December. And I knew one person in this whole United States, one person. Back then, he was my boyfriend. And a year later, he became my husband. And so we have been married for over 35 years. And during this time, I worked in the Jewish organized world. I was the education director of a synagogue. And it almost feel like when I came to the United States, I thought to myself, what can I give? What can I serve? What are my strengths? And I knew that I loved Judaism, and I was a very proud Israeli. And I thought, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to combine who I am with what I love to do, and I'm going to serve the community. And I did it, and it was an amazing experience. I raised 3 children together with my husband in the synagogue, in the Jewish community world, and I was very satisfied. And in 2018, it was a February day, I was planning to travel to Israel. I remember this day, Adi, like it was yesterday. And the night before my flight, a friend of mine came to my house to give me a book to read while I'm on the plane. So, and it was in a paper bag. And I put that paper bag in my backpack and didn't even think twice about it until I sat at the airport and then boarded the plane, sat by the window, grabbed my book, this book, out of the paper bag, and saw that the name of the book was The Universe Has Your Back by Gabrielle Bernstein. And not even reading anything yet, I sat just with the title. And I thought to myself, the universe has your back. What would you want to do, Dorice? And maybe need a little bit more trust or push or belief in your abilities. And for a while, I've been feeling in my heart that I have concluded this period of me being the educator, the master teacher, the connector of people to Judaism and to Israel. And now I wanted to leave that world, but I wanted to leave it with my head up and not with my head down. I wanted to leave with options for me. I didn't want people to think, oh, she's leaving because she hated it, but rather she's leaving because there is another thing for her down the road. And so I start reading this book. And by the time I arrived to Israel, I remember this. I was at Ben Gurion Airport and I connected to the Wi-Fi of the airport. And I called my husband on WhatsApp and I said, honey, I just want you to know that July, I'm leaving the synagogue world and I'm going on my own. So you can imagine how your partner may take that. And my husband was no different. He said, why don't you enjoy these 2 weeks you have in Israel? And when you come back, we'll just revisit that. And I said, no problem. We'll revisit that. Just know that this is my decision. And it was very clear to me as day from night that I needed to do that my heart and my soul were saying, come out to the whole world in who you are. And it's shocking, Adi, that for the 30 years that I was working in the Jewish organized world, I did not know, except one person, I did not know or were connected with anybody who was not Jewish. Shocking. When I say to myself right now, it's bewildering to me because I am a very social person, but it seemed like anybody that came into the four walls of the synagogue which I worked or needed my services in the Jewish world, that's who I worked with. So I never worked with somebody who was not and was proudly their own religion. So,
Dorice, just on that point, it just because I interviewed many people, and I think what we have here in common is, first of all, you were talking about your purpose, and all of a sudden you realize what your purpose is, but also as you said, it doesn't matter what religion it is or what it is, because you can also feel it. Like, I heard those stories from people that worked years in the corporate world, and the only people that they knew, because those are the people that they're connected themselves with, or they were connected with, or they interacted, or their network will be from that particular either profession or corporate. So it's really the symptom of being in your own little world that you're serving, right? But then
exactly.
And making the decision to actually get out of there and broaden your horizons, if you would.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So then I came back 2 weeks later and I had discussions with my husband, and within, I would say, a month and a half, he was on board with me because he was more rational, which I understand. So I had to help him trust me also in not being rational the way he was. And at the same time, I prepared the ground for me leaving on July 1st. It's not like I left and I had zero idea what to do. Because in my head, I said, I want to speak to audiences. I want to speak on stages. I want to train people in leadership, in understanding what sabotages them, in understanding how they can overcome different obstacles. By maybe shifting their mindset, they can actually grow to be who they meant to be. So I created my website, my name, Dorice Horenstein, and my tagline was find the champion within. because I believe that everybody is a champion. And at the same time, I wrote my book starting in 2018, because my sister was diagnosed with cancer.
Right.
And so the idea was that I will put beautiful, uplifting messages on Facebook, on the videos for a whole year, which I did. And then this videos became the impetus for the book. And through the videos, I realized that all I'm talking about is relationships. Everything. It was like a common element with all the videos. And again, sometimes you write or you speak some things and then you don't see the thread. But when you take several foot away, like a 50-foot height, and you look down, you say, oh yeah, it's all about relationships. And that's where my system started to develop. Oh, I'm talking about 4 relationships: with myself, with other people, with the power outside of us, and then our relationship with the events that are happening in our lives. And these are the 4 relationships that somehow translated into my coaching and into my speaking. And it was a thread. So that's how I left in 2018, July 1st. And I left with my head high. And people still love me in the Jewish community world. And I look back at this experience as really foundational, just like the army service that I did in Israel was foundational for me, just like the way I grew up in Israel. I take all these stories and I say, this is Dorice. Dorice is not one thing. She's a combination of all the events that happened to her in her life. And I'm not unique in that sense, right?
We all
you
are.
have
That's
the same
true.
thing. You are the product of everything that happened to you, and so that's what I come to inspire, and I come to coach and train.
Wow. That's an amazing story. So how did you develop your brand from there? Now, granted, I'm sure you already had a brand, because we all have a personal brand, right? And I know you, and I'm sure, I haven't known you when you were still working at a synagogue, but I met you afterwards with your existing brand. But even then, I'm sure you had your own brand, because you are who you are. As you said, you are unique. The way you dress, the way you talk, the way how you present yourself, etc. Right? So you already had a brand.
Mm-hmm.
How did you take that, whomever you were there then, and really find yourself and just augment on that brand that is today, Dorice Horenstein?
What a great question. So when I left, again, I did not know anyone. So I remember the first time, it was September of 2018, and I went to a walk for Cure for Cancer. And I so happened to meet some people there. And they knew they're from the Jewish world, and they knew that I left. And so they said to me, oh, you should join NSA, National Speaker Association. Dorice Horenstein did not know about that. And so the next day, Dorice joins NSA. And then when I arrived to the meeting, they said, what do you do? And I had to pause and think, what do I do? And for the next few weeks, I actually sat quietly and says, what do I do? And start journaling and writing down, what do I do? And then somebody from the NSA said to me, Dorice, you're a wonderful speaker, because I was communicating with them. They did not know how I am on stages. And they suggested, Dorice, why don't you join Toastmasters for Speaking Professionals? And I'm thinking, why not? I should. So I did. And within 6 months, I became the president of Toastmasters for Speaking Professionals. I guess that's the leadership part in me, is saying, let me serve, let me do this. And so I did that for 2 years. And you learn a lot. People think, I'm a good speaker, I can speak. No, that there is an art to speaking, that there is an arc, not only an art, but an arc of speaking. How do you deliver the message? What is the take home? How do you start? How do you finish? So I did that. And then as I was doing this, I met with people and they said, Dorice, it's a good idea to join networking groups. So I thought, okay. So I started joining, and that's how you and I met. In one of
a big shout out here to Liz Hatcher, who connected us from Women to Women Network. She's an amazing connector, has an amazing group. So definitely connected there. Also want to give a shout out to Alice Tang, my good friend Alice from AskAliceTang.com, because she's the one who introduced me to women in financial services. And that's where I saw a big promotion, Dorice Horenstein. And the whole promotion was talking there about you. And I go like, wow, I have to meet that lady. So I just want to give a shout out to those two amazing women that connected us. So, but that's the power of connection, right? It's the power of the community.
Yes. And you're so right, Adi, because sometimes you don't know when you speak in a place, you don't know what will be the remnants of that speaking engagement. So, how did I come to speak at WIFS, Women in Financial Services? It was because I did a launch of my book, Moments of the Heart. I had 250 people there. 2 people in the audience were people probably more than 2, but 2 of them I did not know. They were involved with WIFS and they heard about me from someone else who said, oh, Dorice wrote a book with Jewish wisdom and a pathway to lead your life. So they said, we're not Jewish, but we're interested. So they came. And because of that, to these 2 women, I was invited to the WIFS, where I ended up being their annual dinner speaker in 2019. And so that's how sometimes something like this starts. And so somebody heard me from the WIFS, and I continue to nurture this relationship, which I think is connecting to a business success, is to connect. Once you speak in one place, it doesn't mean that it's one and done, but you continue to nurture that bond, that relationship that you have created with those who brought you in. And so from that came many other speaking opportunities with Standard Insurance, with KLA, with Thermo Fisher Scientific, with all these, because one person tells the other, tells the other, tells the other. So
you're obviously an amazing speaker. So I just have to ask, like, what's your audience? What is your favorite audience? Like, who would you like to speak in front all day long?
Beautiful question. So it depends what kind of talk I give, because I give 2 different types of talks. One of them is the motivational, inspirational, standing up in front of people and motivate them from my own stories to how they should lead their own life, the wisdom that I impart on them. So for example, there is a talk that I give that it's called Invest in Your Hack, which is I talk all about hope and action and courage and kindness because of something that happened to me, not getting along with my boss. And so it's very vulnerable story, and it's captivating because I don't know one single person in this whole universe who doesn't have somebody that they do not get along with, right? We all have that person that we say, I wish I could be in a better relationship with that person. So that is one talk that I do. Another, and that for this audience is those who want just one standalone inspirational as a speaker. The other talks that I do is more retrain your brain so that you impact your ROI in your personal life, but also with a team at your corporate work, at your voluntary board. And the way I define a team, TEAM, is together everyone's attributes are magnified. If you take the first letter of every word, that's team. So how are your values being magnified as you interact with other people in the team? And that has to do a lot with the mindset.
So which audience do you do that to?
Companies. So I do that for companies and corporation and associations that want to bring me in to say, train our group, do the 2-hour deep dive, and let's see how we can continue.
Dorice, let's talk about back to you and your branding. So now we understand, like, okay, so you definitely doing a lot of those speaking engagements. Again, started from nothing, built to it. So it's identifying your own brand. You obviously figured out what is the common thread of what you do and identify the 4 areas, and you go, okay, this is what I do. So you had your niche, or you became more focused on what you're doing.
Yes.
Finished the book, connected, got outside of your comfort zone, right?
Absolutely outside. Even though I am an extrovert, it still requires courage to step into a room, to enter a room when you know No one. And you come in and you say, I'm here to meet. And then I realize as I'm seeing other people, because a lot of the time being an observer is really wise. So even for extroverts, watch what is happening around you. And I noticed that those people who hand off their business cards to everybody, that may not be the best way for me to do it, because those cards will be tossed to the garbage when you leave. So it's like, or will be added to a pile that we'll never looked at. So what is it that I need to do to create that connection, that bond? So it took me a while to realize that business card is not the only way. And it's not the first thing I give. And some people do that. So I would say be aware of that.
Absolutely. It's really what we are talking about. You know how I love to talk, like, put the common thread as well and build it into a system. The system you're really describing is a system of how to connect, how to build, basically a system on how to build meaningful relationship in order to grow your business. I mean, that's really what it's all about, because first of all, you have to identify what is it that you can give and serve others. You have to identify your own brand. You have to connect others and connect with others. And as you said, nurture those relationships, right? It's like you continue to be in communication with them. Have courage to take the new opportunity to network up, to find somebody, have that courage, which that word is very, very important. And I think most of all is like really follow your path. You had your call, you had your aha moment, understanding what you want to do. And you just have to go, okay, that's it. That's what I'm doing, right?
Adi, you hit a beautiful nail on the head here, because you said, you have to love. You have to love. You have to love what you want to do. And it has to be internal. You got to know why you want to do it. Like, why did I want to leave a position of 16 years that I could, if I wanted, I could continue it until I retire, and then said, okay, now I'm retired. Now I can go travel and whatever. But I didn't do it. At the age of 52, I stepped into nowhere, really, into the unknown, because I loved and agreed with my own reason of doing it. And it wasn't that somebody else told me to do it. It's I knew that I had to do it. As a matter of fact, if I listened to other people, I may not have done it.
That's right.
And
that's how you come authentic. That's what makes you so authentic, because you are authentic because it's you. It's not somebody else telling you to do it.
Yeah, it's like jumping into an ocean, but trusting yourself that you can swim. That you can swim. At the beginning, maybe a little bit of I need some help, but I could swim. And I think I proved it to myself that I can. We mentioned the word courage, and my head always goes Hebrew, English, like constantly. And the word for courage in Hebrew is ometz lev, right? Think about that. Ometz is to adopt, like le'ametz yiladim, to adopt, and then lev is heart. So the adaptation of the heart. Like, where is your heart leading you to eventually land? Where do you want to do that? And it's that listening to the inside voice. And sometimes it's a small sound, whisper voice. And the more we're quiet, the more we can hear it.
That's right. Dorice, I really love in your book, you make a lot of mention to different Hebrew words, and you go back to the roots and you explain. And there's a lot of simplicity in Hebrew words. And when you go back to that simplicity, you understand the meaning of the word better, because you say, oh, that's what it means. That's how it came about. And it has, like in Hebrew, you have the same root for different words, and then you can connect those words. So I think you did a fabulous job in this book, connecting to also the tradition, to Judaism, to different concepts that definitely you and I were brought up using those concepts. But I think anybody can connect to this book. It's a great book. So Moments of the Heart, definitely go get it on Amazon. And it was a pleasure having you as a guest. What a wonderful conversation. Very inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing me here, and just having this conversation with me and forging a relationship with me. I don't take it for granted, and I value you and all the success that you do and all the help that you provide for so many people. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.